Welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley, and joining me today is someone who made a defining bet on himself at 24 years old, walked away from a safe job, and went all in on building something from scratch in the mortgage business. He's now working towards $100 million in loan volume with a team first mindset, a stack of business audio books his kids know by heart, and a clear-eyed view of what it actually takes to build a business that runs without you being the bottleneck. Brad Hamblen, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thanks, Connor. I appreciate it.
Hey, you bet, man. I'm excited to have this conversation. It's been fun getting to know you and just learn a little bit about how you're operating and the things that you're focused on. I like to just jump right in. I mentioned in the introduction that you left a safe job at 24. You were working two jobs. One of them was as a loan officer, sort of on the side, and you made the call to leave the bank, Citibank, and just go all in. What was actually like going through your mind in that moment, and did the decision feel as clean as it sounds in hindsight?
It actually was pretty clean when I made that decision. It was a definitive line that I kind of drew and said, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go do this and do it full time, do it like go after it and do it. And I'm so glad that I actually did it. And I made the choice to do it then because that was like 2005. And it was right before the market shifted and changed. And I went to go work for a company that was a part of Countrywide. And you can all have your opinions about Countrywide and how it ended up and that. But the one thing that they did that was really good is they showed me the loan officer model where you got business from real estate agents. And that's kind of what sparked my business from there on out because I knew I had to be engulfed in the purchase money business game and I had to meet real estate agents and realtors that would be able to send me business so that I could help their clients with financing and start building a book.
Yeah. So how have things evolved from that? I mean, we're talking about what, early 2000s. So how has like realtor prospecting and the way that you go after those agents, how has that changed, or is it still just all the same as it was in the past?
Well, that it's definitely a lot different today because half the technologies didn't exist back then. And it used to be more of a like, hey, let me drop off a rate sheet or let me bring you donuts and leave them at the front. Agents were office centric back then. And now it's agent out there in the field centric now. And you're not going to find the majority of the agents just sitting in their office waiting for business to come to them. They're out in the field doing things. So you have to find them where they are and what they're doing and be in proximity to them, but also build relationships with them.
Right. Yeah, it seems like, the post-COVID culture, working from home, this no office sort of we're out in the open kind of culture. It can be challenging. So, how are you building that proximity? Is there a trick to the trade there? Is there something that you leverage that's helping you just get in front of those agents without necessarily having to walk into an office and see them first? Or like how are you building that familiarity?
So this is the secret sauce that you're probably asking and looking for is that you can not have to visit them in the office, but you can visit them right here on their phone in their pocket at any point in time through social media. And that is really like a portion of what you're doing in business today is to be in proximity to people online, not being in proximity to them just in real life, but online too in social settings.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Social media is so powerful. Just the ability to somehow be known without being known. Like I can think of I was at a conference last year. I'm walking past one of the vendors. He was selling cutting boards, like closing gifts, and he goes,
Mhm.
"Connor," and I'm like, "Who just said that?" And it was just some guy from another, state who just happened to be at the same conference, but had seen content and knew me, and it was a kind of a bizarre but a very cool feeling to then stop, have a good conversation, and it just felt very natural after that. So anyway, yeah, it's so powerful. But let's step back to kind of early in your career. You had this belief that being a great loan officer meant knowing the loan programs in and out and holding the client's hand through every step. What made you realize that belief might have actually been holding you back?
That kind of leads to like where I got into a spot where the time that I was spending with the clients and the time that I was spending doing everything by myself, that I just ran out of bandwidth. I couldn't take any more loans in because I didn't have the bandwidth. There was not enough time in the day to go all the way through the process with everybody and give them the level of experience that I needed at the time. So what I learned, and that was because I was out there getting more business. And the thing that I really kind of understood about it, it was more about getting business than it was about servicing the clients, and that you needed to have a team to service the clients rather than you being the one that had every touch point with the client or with the people involved in the transaction, where you had a team that helped you with that.
Yeah, that's so huge. And it comes up over and over again on the lowdown when we talk to these loan officers that have built these great businesses. There's this turning point that happens when the team starts to come into play, and there starts to be this delegation and these handoffs, and it frees the loan officer up to maintain the prospecting that they were doing, the relationship building. And it just is it's a very, I don't know, it's a momentous shift, I think, in a loan officer's career where they're able to let go and start leaning on their team a lot more. Now, you've talked about just in getting to know you that building relationships with the right referral sources rather than kind of chasing everyone you can, right? Anyone and everyone who will take a meeting was really important. What does that process actually look like for you today? And like, how are you determining who to prospect in the first place?
That's a good question. So when you look at where you're going and what your goals are and what you're trying to do, you have to also make sure that the people that you're looking to work with have the ability to send you enough business to get to the goals that you want. So rather than go really far and spread really thin and try to meet everyone and talk to everyone, I have three key relationships that I'm working after for this whole year. And that's my whole process, is these three key relationships. And I may go a few months into one and figure out that's not the right path and have to go down a different path. But I only have three people that I'm trying to really get to work with over this next year. That's what I'm looking for, is three bigger teams that have enough business to help me achieve my goals.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So how do you know who they are? Are you using like MMI information, or are they just local reputation? Maybe you've cut a deal once or twice here or there and you want to get into a better relationship, or what, like how are you determining that?
I'll use their slogan, "Redder is better."
Okay.
So I use Rudder to get all the details and data that I need for real estate agents, loan officers, the people that are out there that are doing business. They're on big lists.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know what's funny about that is I've heard a lot of really top performing agents speak at different events and what have you. And a lot of them will tell you that they don't get prospected as much as you might think. There's an intimidation factor there. There's a lot of assumptions that get made. Oh, they probably got somebody already. They're a big producer. They wouldn't want to hear from me. There's a lot of just like, I don't know, talking yourself out of it that goes on. And when you hear these top producing agents talk, sometimes they're like, listen, I really don't get hit up a lot. So I think it's smart to kind of circle a few top names and say, let's go all in. Now, as you go down that path, you sort of mentioned that you would give it some time. Is this like a 90-day? Let's trial, see where I can gain traction, or how long do you want to give something like
If it's the right relationship, it's probably 6 months to 8 months, depending on
that?
what your response rate is. At some point in time, Tom Brady came off the bench and was put into the game and then never went back out of the game. So that's kind of the relationship that I'm looking for, is like, I want to be the guy that gets put in when there's something that kind of just goes awry.
Yeah, you never know when your number is going to get called and it's next man up, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
got to be ready. Now, kind of back to the team, something that you made a comment about in the past was that you want to give the team and the members of the team just ability to spend money to fix the problem, right? To just have control.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds simple, but a lot of loan officers really do struggle with letting go of that control. How did you build trust and structure in the team to make that possible?
With the team, it's very important that they're empowered to do what they need to do. And if you have somebody that works for you, you obviously hired them for a reason because you expected them to be able to do a specific job. Rather than manage somebody, I'd rather lead somebody and give them the empowerment to fix a problem. And whether it's, hey, on this side of things, for instance, my assistant has the ability, if there's something that she needs to do that's to fix a problem, she has $500 at her leisure to do whatever she needs to do. Like if we have to give a credit, we have to make a change, we have to do this. I don't want her to message me about a $500 like change that we have to do. So she says, hey, we have to credit them $250 for the final inspection fee because we didn't. I don't want her to hesitate. I just want it credited and us on moving on to the next thing. And then we do a recap afterwards so she can tell me what she did to resolve the problem. And I'm never going to second guess what her decision was in that specific scenario. I'm just going to follow along and praise her for taking the decision and making the decision to take action at the time rather than wait for me to be able to respond.
I love that concept because I know there has to be so many times where if you didn't have that, permission, where that person would go, "Gosh, if only I could spend, $40, right, or something like that," and just, but then the time that's wasted in, "Hey, Brad, do you mind if I do this?" And now that's another decision that you're having to make and weigh out, and it's just sort of like, you know what? Just do it. Right. Here's the budget. You're free to do whatever you feel needs to be done, and then let's assess the effectiveness of it afterward. Love that idea, man. So, but as far as like teammates, not all, I guess not all hires pan out the way you might want them to in terms of just the strategic reason for the hire. I mean, we talked a little bit in the past about how you hired someone to get into LinkedIn, set appointments, and found that sometimes the wrong people were being prospected or, appointments were being scheduled that weren't necessarily the most effective use of your time. And I know that's frustrating. What did that experience teach you about how to qualify who should be, worth your time?
Right. So you're 100% right about that. And sometimes you're out there trying to figure out a different way to have more meetings happen and make more things happen. And you may try to take a shortcut and do it this way. So I'm going to hire somebody that does this outreach. And when you hire them to do this outreach, their job is to set you appointments and they're judged on how many appointments they set you. And sometimes when you take a look back, I said, well, hey, look, I went on 30 appointments, but all the people that I spoke to, when I went back and reviewed their data or looked at what their process was, I was like, should I have been on a call with that person? Because they weren't really at the production level that was necessary in order for it to be productive for either one of us. And that's kind of the thing that I learned is that you have to, if you're going to hire somebody to do something specific like that, you have to be super specific and have your own list that you're going off of. And if they go through your list and they say, hey, we weren't able to set the appointments, then that means that it's probably not going to be a good fit for you in the future to work with that person if you have specific people that you're trying to meet. I feel like I learned a lot with the LinkedIn appointment setting because I learned that if I'm going to hire somebody to do a specific job, that I need to be more clear what the definition of what success looks like. Because what they were successful with was setting appointments. What wasn't really successful is the people that were on these appointments or the Zoom calls that I was on weren't necessarily the people that were on my targeted list. They were a subcategory of my targeted list. And there ended up being some meetings that I went on that weren't really productive for their time or my time because they weren't exactly the right fit of my target market or the people that I wanted to speak to.
So now that's really interesting, Brad. I appreciate that. And yeah, I can understand like you do need to level set the expectations, know exactly what the job is, and really just assess that. And I think that was a great learning experience. So I appreciate you sharing. Something that I definitely wanted to bring up on this podcast and in this conversation is something you shared with me that you've been doing since 2017. You mentioned that you have been just on road trips when you're in the car, when you're taking kids to practice, just sort of like day to day family stuff. you always have like an audio book going on in the background in the car, and your kids are starting to pick that up through osmosis. And I know a lot of people struggle to find time to learn, but what does that system look like for you? Like, how do you decide what you listen to? And then also, like, what are some of your kids' favorite books?
That's a really good question. I felt like you have a lot of downtime, you have some downtime, and I would listen to audiobooks on Audible in the gym, and I would listen to them in the car, and I would take a book and consume it, and then get leads for what's the next book I should look at. And at the beginning, it was a little more like little more distant between leads on books on what I would read next and that because I was getting into it. But now it's so easy. I'll be at a conference or be somewhere and someone will mention that this is the source of the document or what they talked about, what came from this book. Or like if I mentioned that it was Who Not How was a book that I read that made me decide like I need to hire like the right person for this specific job and not learn how to figure out it myself. That was one of the things I took away from it. If I mention that or somebody mentions that, I'll grab on that book and I'll take it and run with it. And I get those mentions all the time now. So I just, as soon as I hear it, I'm either putting it in my to-do-ist so that I know to download it, or I'm like downloading it on Audible right then and there and making it like part of it. So I was at a conference a week ago and I downloaded 4 additional books that were on Audible that were things that were recommended by the people that were on stage speaking. So you had a second part to that question, which was like, what Audible books did my kids like the most? And that I love that. My daughter doesn't really have an Audible book that she liked the most. But when I was listening to Carl White's podcasts for the Mortgage Marketing Animals, and he would do those podcasts, she would listen to all of them and she learned a lot from them. Like she understands the whole concept of like the mortgage marketing animals and all that. Well, she thought it was awesome that she's like, "Are you going to an event with them?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "So you're going to see Carl White?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to see him." And then when I get to, and she's so sweet because she's still trying to figure out what she wants to do. And at the time when she was like 15-ish, she's like, "I think I want to do what you do when I grow up." And I said, "I love it, sweetie." I said, "I love that you want to do that." I said, "I have a couple things that I would probably have you do that's a little bit different than what I do just because I want better for you. But I love that you want to do that." So when I went to the next event with Mortgage Marketing Animals, I was there and Carl was there. And I said, "Hey, Carl, can we do a quick picture?" And we did a picture and like I sent it to her and I said, "Carl says hi." And she loved that. And Carl loved that. And it was like a really good thing. And that's something that we did. And my son, he has downloaded some of his own books on there. So he put down like he wanted to learn about Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I read that book like when I was 20 years old. I read that book when it first came out and he wanted to read it and listen to it. And we put it through Audible and just went through it. But they hear the audibles in the car. And one of their friends, or I think it was one of our relatives, was riding with them and said, "Hey, what kind of music do you guys like?" And they're like, "We don't really know. We listen to my dad's documentaries all the time in the car. We really don't get to hear that. But my son can tell you about a 1031 exchange and how that works." I can tell that they pick that stuff up, and I'm glad that they were retaining that stuff rather than learning the lyrics to some of the songs that are out there on radio
Right.
today.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I sometimes I listen to the radio and I start feeling just like an old man because I'm like, oh, this garbage. But you're exactly right. And I love that you just sort of set up that environment and that the kids are into it. I mean, that's really cool too. So I love that you've just sort of been giving them that subliminal guidance along the way. Now, when we were talking before this, you had mentioned that you're sort of outgrowing Brad the loan officer right now and starting to kind of come into Brad the business owner. What's been the hardest part of that shift? Because at the end of the day, you're still trying to fund loans and get that part of the business done. How have you sort of balanced that out?
The when you mentioned that, it made me think about 3 different things, and um, the alter ego effect comes right to mind. And with that book, when I listened to it a long time ago, and Todd Herman wrote that book, and he came and spoke at GrowthCon this past time we met up in November or October. He was there, and as soon as he gets on stage, he also did his own Audible book, so it's like all right back in my head. And then it really made me think about it is that alter egos, you create an alter ego to be the person that you want to be, but you also have to kill the old ego that you were before. So Brad the loan officer has to die in order for Brad the business person to survive and be the new person. So when you have Brad the business person coming alive, you have to kill off Brad the loan officer because he's not the person that's driving the ship anymore. It's Brad the business owner. And with that, when you're jumping into something new and you're doing something different, your same thing is happening where you're like having this imposter syndrome feeling and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're going through the valley of despair. Is like, this the right route? Is this the right route? Is this the right route? And you get the resistance. And then all of a sudden, like you hit this thing like, nope, this is the actual way it's supposed to be done, because you have to be able to get out of the minutia of being Brad the loan officer and be Brad the business person who is good at developing relationships and solving problems that other real estate agents, other builder reps have, and helping them get where they need to go and follow through that. So that's how Brad, the business owner, works. He's helping the other real estate agents or the builder reps with their business rather than just being the one that caters to the loans. I have a team that does the loan stuff. I'm going to help you with your business and do that part of it. And they're going to help make sure that everything goes smoothly on the loan side.
You said that if you don't have leverage, you are someone else's leverage. That's a line worth sitting with. What does leverage actually look like in practice for a loan officer who's ready to grow but hasn't built their team yet?
So you are someone else's leverage if you're not creating your own leverage. And I'm still somebody else's leverage too, because I'm working a division and I'm helping them get where they want to go and they have their plans. But I also have people that I know that are my leverage, like my assistant, my team, my processor, my team is my leverage that gives me the ability to do the 80-20 principle and do the 20% of the things that move the needle 80% of the way. So we're like going with that. If you don't have the right people in place, this is there's a few, but this is one of the main jobs where we're loan officers that are supposed to be loan originators that are out there generating loans and creating business and being the salesperson. Well, if you work in IT, and you're in sales and IT, you're not going out to do the product demo. You're not going out to do the install. But in the mortgage business, they sometimes think that we are there for fulfillment too, where we have to sell the loan, get the loan done, and then collect all the pay stubs and do all the documentation on it. And that's not really like the proper leverage that you need, because you can't go collecting pay stubs and doing everything involved in the file and have enough files going on to where you can make a great living. And that's what you're trying to get to, is the point where you can create a leverage so that you can scale and get out of the minutia of doing the loan stuff and have people that you hire that you're also helping them grow. You need mentors helping you go one rung up the ladder, and you need to be helping other people get one rung up the ladder too, or two or three, four. But you need to just be able to do both, where you're going up and they're able to be pulled with you. And that's the whole concept of it. Not necessarily like it's just going to be all about leverage, where you are helping people and developing them and being.
You also talked about being at a fax machine at 9 or 10 at night in 2009 and realizing you had hit a ceiling. What was the hardest part of that season, and what did it take to actually get yourself unstuck?
Well, I was working until like 9 o'clock at night in like 2008, 2009, like putting all these loans together, because I'd learned the first concept was catered to realtors. Then I moved into a real estate office and then started doing a lot more business. And I was working until 9 or 10 at night. And I was actually, it was either a fax machine or it was a scanner. And I think it was like early days, so I may still been faxing and not scanning yet. And I was there at like 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night at the office, and I'm scanning something, and I was just like, there's got to be a better way to do this. I know that I can figure this out. And I got onto this community forum for Boomtown. And at the time, like there was, lenders community and a real estate agents community. And I found a guy that was in the lender community that said, hey, if you're looking to, do this and get this stuff done in the next like 12 months, message me and we'll see what we can do to like get you there or something like that. And the guy's name was Shane McGraw, and he's the guy that pretty much changed the whole trajectory with me with leverage and my team and how that whole concept worked. Because I messaged him, I said, hey man, I got some stuff going on. I just don't seem like I have enough time in the day. And he's like, yeah, man, let's get on a call. We'll talk and I'll walk you all through all this stuff. So after the next day, I ended up on a call. I messaged him that evening and I think he responded in the morning or something. And I ended up on a call with him like in a day. And I mean, it was really quick turnaround. And he said, hey, we went through what my problem was, what we were looking to do, how I was trying to do it. And he goes, here. And he like basically threw up this whole concept on me for the core training, which was like hire a loan processor, hire a loan partner 2, hire a loan partner 1. And he went over all that stuff in a 45-minute like spiel. And I was like, dude, this saved my life. And he's like, yeah. He's like, oh, and also I'm going to have someone from the training program call you to set it up to where you can come out and come to our summit where you get to go and spend a couple of days with all these people in the room and go through that. And I went out there. It was in Southern California at the Indian Wells Resort. It always escapes me the name of the town that it was in. And I was there for 2 days. I was partnered up with a real estate agent that was kind of showing me the ropes. And then I met a whole bunch of people there. I still talk to those people that I met at that one event today, and I'll still message them. And I still talk to Shane McGraw via Facebook. And like, he's one of the people that kind of set me on this different path. And if it wasn't for his always paying it forward kind of mentality where he's like, hey, I'm not going to be a gatekeeper here. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. That was key to set me up to where I would be able to do the things with leverage that I'm doing now. And I did work with a lot of people to get to the right spot. And then when you find the right person, that right person identifies himself and comes forward right when you need him the most. And I feel like I've had that person come forward and be there and do the stuff that I need so that I can take everything to be the business person and not necessarily be the loan officer getting stuck in the minutia. And they do call, like, I deal with any of the problems that come up that they can't solve, but they solve 99% of all problems. And the 1% that I deal with, I'm like, okay, I understand why you brought that to me. And like, we'll figure out and do a recap on how we can prevent that from happening in the future.
You made a point that if loan officers are not building a presence on YouTube and optimizing for AI search, they're going to be left behind, and that the big box lenders are not paying attention to this. What should someone who is hearing that for the first time actually do first?
Well, yeah, that's where we're headed. That is 100% where we're headed in the future is going. If you're not making content for AI to establish who you are and you as an authority, and that you're going to be left behind. We were at Family Reunion with Keller Williams, and Gary Vee was the speaker there. And I'll refrain from all the profanity. I loved it, by the way. Like, he knows how to interject the pattern interrupts that are necessary. And the curse words are to create a pattern interrupt so that you understand and take in what he's saying so it elevates it. And he does a fantastic job with his delivery. One of the things that he did in that event was he asked, who's used Google to search on Google, and just Googled something? Everyone raised their hand. Now, how many people are actually like using AI or asking ChatGPT those questions and doing that rather than going to Google now? And then everyone raised their hand again. This is a room filled with 11,000 people. That's where search is now. If you're not using SEO and GEO, you're going to be left behind, and you have to make content. And there's not been an AI declared winner yet. I would say that it's going to be the one that has the most data, and the person that has all the data on SEO has all the Gmail, has all the, yep, that's it, has all the Gmail, has everything that you're already doing. If you're part of that, it's going to be Google that wins. They're going to have the best AI. And they already got Notebook LM, which is wild. They got all these things that they put together. And if you use Notebook LM and you research something, it's using YouTube Shorts, and it's using those as like the source data for everything. So that could be good or bad but if it's Google and it's all intertwined with YouTube Shorts, and it's also part of your Gmail, your contacts, and all this stuff, at some point in time, this thing's going to be able to do so many things because of all the data it has. Remember, if you have an Android phone, you have this, you're using Google Maps. Anytime you turn that stuff on, like, you're giving them access to it. So they got the data. And whether everyone's like, oh, this is, you either use it to your advantage or it's using you to its advantage. So you need to figure out how you can utilize it so that it could be your like useful tool rather than you be its useful tool.
I love that. That's a great point, man. And I really appreciate all that you've shared today, and just all the wisdom that you've given to this episode. I think you've, really knocked a lot of things out of the park. So I'm grateful for that. But man, Brad, I want to thank you for being a part of the Lowdown community, joining the show. And, I wish you nothing but the best in the future.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Connor.
You got it.